This is Pauline Hanson. She is the leader of the Australian right-wing party One Nation, which has been making significant gains in polling recently. And not just that, but she's just made global headlines for walking into Parliament wearing a full burka and heels, much to the shock of everybody around her. And she didn't stop there. Hanson sat through Senate proceedings fully covered, forcing the entire chamber into chaos and triggering one of the most severe punishments a sitting senator has faced in years. So what pushed Pauline Hanson to pull off one of the most controversial political moves in recent Australian memory? Well, this all happened off the back of Hanson trying to bring forward a bill to ban full face coverings in public. The Senate surprisingly refused to even debate it, so she walked out, returned a moment later completely covered in a burqa, took a seat and waited for the room to react. The chamber almost immediately lost focus. Senators were irritated and of course, some were visibly angry. Pauline, a hijab-wearing Muslim senator, looked over and reportedly asked if Hanson had just come from Afghanistan.
Did you just come from Afghanistan?
The Senate eventually shut the entire session for the day because no one could continue business while Hanson was sitting there fully veiled. The next morning, the reaction was even stronger. Labor, Liberal, Greens and Independents all condemned it. Some said it put Muslim Australians in the firing line. Mehreen Faruqi called it racist.
A dress code might be a choice of the senators, but racism should not be the choice of the Senate. This is a racist senator displaying blatant racism and Islamophobia, President.
Payman called it disgraceful.
If this is about the dress code, she is disrespecting a faith. She is disrespecting the Muslims out there, Muslim Australians. It's absolutely unconstitutional. This needs to be dealt with immediately before we proceed.
Even Conservative senators who usually tolerate Hanson's theatrics had no interest in defending her. Outside Parliament, the coverage went international. Photos of her in a burqa and heels were everywhere. At the end of the week, the Senate voted to censure her and suspend her for 7 sitting days. That almost never happens. Only a handful of senators in Australian history have been suspended for that long. The vote was overwhelming at 55-5. Hanson, however, did not apologise. She doubled down. She said that if Parliament did not want her wearing the burqa, then they should ban it. She argued the garment is oppressive, not Australian, and used in parts of the world to keep women silent and hidden. Her claim was that Parliament ignored the bill, complained about the stunt, and showed complete hypocrisy by doing both. To her, the burqa symbolises a real problem and she wanted to force the issue into the open. Regardless of what anyone thinks of Pauline Hanson, I think this is the key issue here. People keep saying, but she's a racist or she's had some unsavoury opinions in the past. But to that, I've got to say, who else is speaking about the burqa as an issue? Nobody. And I can assure you, nobody will in the future either, because this is what the paradox of tolerance looks like. Now, before we get to the next part, if you enjoyed this video so far, please remember to give the video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and consider signing up on Patreon, which comes with a ton of perks. As someone who grew up inside the religion of Islam, not outside of it, I have a very different understanding of what the burqa represents. People here in Australia treat the burqa like it's some quirky cultural outfit, something you choose the way you choose a winter jacket. That is not how it works. The burqa is not an accessory. It is not harmless. It was designed to remove a woman's identity from public life. It turns a human being into a silhouette. You do not need to be a political scientist to figure out why a system like the Taliban loves it so much. This is where I find Senator Fatima Payman's reaction to Hanson especially interesting. Payman is an Afghan woman. She knows exactly what the burqa means under Taliban rule. She knows the history of forced veiling in Afghanistan. Yet she went on the attack, calling the stunt racist and disgraceful, as if the garment itself carries no real-world consequences. If anyone should be capable of separating criticism of a symbol from hatred of a people, it should be someone who lived under a regime that forced women to disappear behind it. But that honesty never seems to come through. Look at Afghanistan today. Women are detained for entering hospitals without a burqa. Female doctors are barred from working unless they put one on. After Herat province enforced the rule more aggressively, there was a 28% drop in women seeking urgent medical care. Think about what needs to happen in a society for almost a third of women to avoid a hospital during a medical emergency. That is terror. And the Taliban is very clear about what they want. Women completely covered up, silent, and at home. The burqa is simply the chosen tool. Whenever this comes up in Western discussions, people love to throw around the word choice. They say some women choose to wear it, so the garment must be respected. Ironically, I strongly feel that the only woman wearing the burqa by choice a few days ago in the country was in fact Pauline Hanson. No woman wears the burqa by choice. The choice argument is pure ignorance or an outright lie. If you grow up in a community where refusing the burqa results in family pressure, gossip, religious guilt, or even threats, then your choice is only theoretical. You are choosing between compliance and consequences. Today, not only are women denied a choice, but the rest of us are finding it harder to even talk about these practices without being shut down, even in countries that call themselves free. That's exactly why I use Proton VPN and why I think you should too. They're based in Switzerland, outside the reach of US, EU, UK, and Australian law. They don't keep logs and are built by the same team behind Proton Mail. When the UK passed its surveillance laws, Proton VPN became the #1 app on the App Store. Their stealth protocol beats censorship firewalls. Secure Core routes your traffic through privacy-first countries, and NetShield blocks trackers before they ever reach you. I've used Proton Mail since Australia announced sweeping surveillance laws last year, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it's now essential. If you want to protect your privacy and support this channel, hit the link below to get up to 60% off Proton VPN. What gets completely ignored is that many Muslim-majority countries have banned the burqa themselves. Tunisia, Chad, Cameroon, Senegal. These are not places known for Western secularism. They implemented bans because extremists used the face coverings to conceal identity and carry out attacks. Sri Lanka did the same after the Easter bombings. Then there are the European bans in countries like France, Belgium, Denmark, the Netherlands, and Switzerland. These countries came at it from a security angle or a social cohesion angle. The reasons vary, but the conclusion is the same. Governments across very different cultures reach the same view. Full face coverings create serious problems. This is why I do not treat the burqa as some harmless cultural garment that deserves protection in the name of tolerance. The entire history of the burqa is built on coercion. You will not find a single day in Taliban-controlled Afghanistan where women happily walk around saying they love it. You'll find women burning their burqas in protest. You'll find arrests. You'll find hospitals turning them away. The Taliban enforces the rules so aggressively that even male relatives are held responsible for women who disobey. That is the reality hiding behind this garment. What made this entire moment even stranger was the reaction from the wider political left. Overnight, a parade of commentators, activists, and politicians came out swinging.
This parliament drips now in racism because for decades, politicians and both major parties, can I say, let it happen.
They treated criticism of the burqa as an attack on all Muslims, which is ridiculous when you look at the actual numbers. Less than 1% of Muslim women in Australia wear a burqa or a niqab. Most do not. Most never have. Yet the loudest voices acted as if Hansen had insulted every Muslim woman in the country. This is where the hypocrisy becomes impossible to ignore. The same people who claim to fight for women's rights suddenly went silent about what the burqa represents for millions of women elsewhere. They jumped straight to cultural sensitivity. They defended the garment as if it is some sacred expression of identity. They did not mention the women in Afghanistan losing access to emergency medical care because of it. They did not mention the women arrested for refusing it. They did not mention the fathers and brothers punished because a woman had the nerve to walk outside with her face visible. None of that made it into their speeches or tweets. Apparently, the only thing that mattered was scoring points against a politician they disliked. And the funniest part is that these same commentators would never defend other ideology that requires women to cover every inch of their body. If a Christian sect forced women to dress in full black cloth from head to toe, the outrage would be immediate. There would be op-eds every morning, entire campaigns and protests outside Parliament. But because it is Islam, the conversation changes completely. They become allergic to honesty. So you end up with a situation where the people who claim to be progressive end up defending the most regressive practice imaginable. A practice rejected by the vast majority of Muslim women in this country. A practice banned by Muslim governments overseas. a practice that has nothing to do with liberation and everything to do with control. The left wants to protect Muslims from offense, although as I always say, you don't have a right to not be offended. You can criticize Pauline Hanson for political theatre. You can dislike her approach or her personality. None of that changes what the burqa represents for the women who never had the luxury of choosing it. Australia became one of the first countries in the world to give women both the right to vote and the right to stand for parliament in 1902. Women gained the right to equal pay for equal work in 1969, and in 1984 made it illegal to sack a woman for being pregnant. Those were hard-fought wins that took decades. They were victories built on the idea that women belong in public life as individuals, not as shadows. We live in a country where women can show their faces, speak their minds, and walk through society without fear of punishment. That is not something we should apologize for. It is something we should protect. And if a debate or a stunt in Parliament is what forces people to confront the uncomfortable truth about the burqa, then maybe the stunt did more good than any of its critics want to admit. It's certainly not Islamophobia to do so.
In the neon haze of a broken dawn, steel towers hum, but the wild runs on. A shadow moves through the circus below, half machine, half beast, with a violet glow. They thought the outback was lost to the flame, but a ding